What we have learned since from the clinical trials is that all of these vaccines are very effective, with the second dose and the first dose upwards of 76 to 79% and over 80% for the messenger RNA vaccines. In the real world, however, we are also finding out that these are very effective vaccines at preventing people from having serious illness, from hospitalization, from death, and we're finding more and more information that they do prevent even milder symptoms in people as well. And importantly for us, we've learned from the real world experience in the UK, in Ireland, in places like Israel, and here in Canada, both in Quebec and BC, where we have strong programs, research to follow this, that after a single dose, you have very good protection, upwards of 80%, and that lasts for many months. So these are important things that we have learned. I've been asked a lot about how the body mounts its protection against the virus, and if I'm vaccinated, why do I still have to wear a mask? It takes time for our body's immune system to respond to the vaccines, no matter which vaccine it is. And it develops two types of immunity. The first is one that we can measure in the blood, and this is called our antibodies. And we've seen a lot about antibodies recently because they're one of the markers that helps us understand if we have those protective mechanisms against the virus. These antibodies bind to the spike protein on the outside of the virus, and all of the vaccines that we have so far are designed to develop, for your body's immune system to develop antibodies to this spike protein. What we don't know is what level of antibodies we need in our blood to protect us from infection or from a disease with this virus. That's what we call a correlate of protection. So if antibody levels don't get as high in some people, and we saw a study including some from here in BC, where antibodies in people who are older or people who have certain blood cancers or certain types of immune compromising conditions, those levels may not rise as high as they do in younger, healthier people. But what we don't know if that has any effect on how well the virus or the vaccine protects you from the virus in the first place. What we have seen from the vaccine effectiveness studies that we have is that regardless of antibody levels, there's a very high protection in seniors, in long-term care that lasts for many months, in healthcare workers, and we're continuing to monitor this on an ongoing basis. It could be because we have the other part of our immune system stimulated as well, and that's what we call the cell-mediated immunity. So triggering of the B cells and the memory cells in our body that activate if we're exposed to the virus. These take longer to develop, and they can't be as easily measured with a blood test. So the bottom line that we are learning, and why we are continuing to focus our program the way we are, is that the protection is very good, not perfect, but very good after a single dose. But it takes time for our body's response, so that protection isn't high enough in everybody for about 21 days after vaccination. And for some people, that protection may not get as high even after 2 doses. So people can still be infected with COVID, particularly in the first couple weeks. And that's why right now it is still incredibly important, even after you've been immunized, even if your community has been immunized, that you take the precautions that we all need to continue with, wearing masks, keeping our distance, not getting together in crowds. Because even though we are partially protected, it takes that period of time before we are all protected. And the good news is, though, even after that single dose, within that shorter period of time, as our body's developing the immune response, we tend to have less severe disease. And we've seen that even though people can get infected, they don't end up in hospital, and thankfully we haven't had deaths. But these are the things that we need to pay attention to for the next few months as more and more people are immunized. I've often been asked if I've had I get many questions about if I've had a reaction to another vaccine, particularly the influenza vaccine, can I get a COVID vaccine? And the answer is yes. These are very different vaccines. They're ones that are new platforms. They're things that we've not used before, and they tend to have very few ingredients in them. What we do know is that the messenger RNA vaccines do stimulate your body's immune response and can stimulate allergic reactions. And the product or the compound that stimulates the allergic reactions more frequently is called polyethylene glycol, or PEG. So if you know you have an allergy to PEG, and some people do, then you should be looking for the AstraZeneca or the Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Otherwise, most people don't have any reaction to don't have allergic reactions to the messenger RNA vaccines, and we know that the safety profile is really good. I've also been asked if I've had Guillain-Barré, which is sometimes comes after, has been associated with some other, both viral infections, but also some immunizations. Can you have a COVID vaccine? And so the answer again is yes. The Guillain-Barré is a type of immune response, autoimmune response to your nervous system that is most often triggered by the infection itself and could be triggered by COVID as well. And it's very less likely, much, much less likely to have anything to do with the vaccine. Along with the vaccine programs, I get asked a lot, and I know there's been a lot of questions out there about the interval between our first and second doses for the 3 vaccines that we have right now. And as you know, in BC and in Canada, our strategy is to vaccinate as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, for the greater benefit of everyone. And no more important is that than now, when we have started to see our cases take off again, and we know the effects that they can have. Even if people don't end up in hospital, we know that there's long-term effects that many people are experiencing from infection with COVID-19. So the strategy that we have taken protects us both as individuals and as a community. And this is achieved by offering the first dose of vaccine to more people, beginning with those at higher risk of having more severe illness. And we know that the single most important risk factor is age. And then we'll go back and provide a second dose. And we know Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization, or NACI, has looked very carefully at this evidence, as have we here in British Columbia, and advised that the time between the first and second doses of the COVID vaccines, all 3 of them that we have in Canada right now and in BC, can be extended up to 4 months. And this allows as many people as possible to get that excellent protection of 80% or more from as quickly as possible. The second dose will be offered as soon as all eligible people in British Columbia have received their first dose, or have at least been offered their first dose. And in most cases, that will mean less than 4 months. We are on track. If the vaccines continue to come, we're on track to get everybody offered a vaccine by early July, by the end of June. The other thing, though, that we will continue to follow is whether extending that interval actually has some benefits to people. And we've seen that with other vaccines, that the longer the interval you have, the more time your body's immune system has to develop that cell-mediated immunity. And that may give us better and longer-lasting protection. And that may help us get through the next respiratory season, even though COVID is likely to be with us for some time. So those are things we don't yet know. And we will be learning as we learn more about how the vaccines are working in people around the world. We also don't know how well these vaccines will continue to work as we see more variants of concern that are circulating in our province and around the world. This approach also allows people to benefit from their own protection, as well as the protection that arises because others will be vaccinated. And that reduces the chance that any of us will spread the virus. And for some people, They don't develop as much antibody as we've heard about. Sometimes people with blood cancers, people who are older may not have as good protection even after 2 doses. So it is that much more important that the most of us in the community are immunized and protected, and that reduces all of our chances of being exposed to the virus in the first place. And that is something that we are seeing now with the dramatic decrease that we've seen in the UK, for example, when they've reached a tipping point in the population. One of the other questions I receive a lot is about how come we're immunizing healthcare workers and we're immunizing people who are extremely vulnerable, clinically vulnerable. We're immunizing elderly people because we know that they are at risk. And how come we're not immunizing the family caregivers as well, whether that's somebody who's caring for a child who can't be immunized, or somebody who's caring for elderly parents? What we've learned is that these vaccines are very effective in protecting people directly, unlike many other vaccines. So we know it works well in elderly people, for example. So our priority is to get vaccine as it arrives into those people who are most at risk first, to protect you directly and then to protect all of us. We have immunized home care healthcare workers in long-term care and hospitals, etc., because they provide care to many vulnerable people. But when you're visiting an individual, your loved one or friend in a long-term care home, or providing care to one person in your home, you are only exposed to them. And that's why it's so important that we continue to protect ourselves directly by using the measures that we have in our community, and to take precautions until our age group comes up. It would not be possible to immunize every family member or parent of every vulnerable person with the vaccines that we have available right now. So we need to do this on a risk-based process, and we know that the most important risk right now is age. The good news is that we will have more vaccines arriving, especially in the next few weeks, and we will all be able to receive our important first dose by June. Many people also wonder this week especially about the pause that we've had in the Covishield, which is the Serum Institute of India, the AstraZeneca vaccines for those under the age of 55. And how that may impact the immunization of workers in our worker program. So as we reported earlier this week, there has been a series of rare but very serious blood clots, sometimes in the brain, associated with low platelets that has been seen in a small number of younger people in Europe. Initially, the reports that we saw were about a risk of 1 in a million, but a study from Germany showed that there was about 29 cases in about 3 million doses. So that means it could be as high as 1 in 100,000. And really, it was the uncertainty. Health Canada, NACI, the Council of Chief Medical Officers of Health, which I participate in, looked at this issue in detail and decided we needed to have more information to determine what the risks and benefits were of this vaccine here in Canada. Very importantly, we have not seen any evidence of this here in Canada. There's been very low numbers around the world, several dozen only, but because it is the risk of a severe illness and death being tied to age, as we've talked about, anyone over 55, especially with the rates of transmission that we're seeing here in BC, the AstraZeneca Covishield vaccine clearly has benefits to you as an individual and to our community to make sure that we can get as many people immunized as quickly as possible. And these benefits far outweigh any risk of these very rare blood events. For younger people, we know they don't usually get as ill, so we want to make sure that these clots, because they can be severe or even fatal, we want to make sure that we know what the risk benefit is for younger people. And we're able to do that in BC and in Canada because we have alternative vaccines. But let me be very clear, we do not expect to see any of these cases in Canada. There's still scientists in Europe, in the UK, who are looking at this in detail and trying to understand what it is. This is a safety signal that we picked up because we are looking very carefully. When you immunize millions of people with new vaccines, this is something we watch for, and it's important that we're able to take action when we see something to get more information before we proceed. So if you have received this vaccine, be reassured that it works very well. It's an effective vaccine, and we know it's safe. And if it's beyond 20 days, then you're beyond the risk factor period for these very rare events anyway. But there is a test and there is treatment. So if you have any concerns, there's much more information on the BC CDC website about what exactly we're talking about, what are the signs to look for, and what the concerns would be. But I'm very confident that we will get to the bottom of this, and this is still an important vaccine for our programs here in Canada and around the world. The other questions that I get about these vaccines, we know that these vaccines, this AstraZeneca, work best when the second dose is at 3 to 4 months. And so people ask, if I've received it already, when am I going to get my second dose, and will it be with the AstraZeneca vaccine? And the answer is we're still working on that, and we have some time to figure that out, to make the best decision about dose 2. And this is something as well that we're collaborating around the world to best understand. The other thing that is happening right now in the UK, where this vaccine has been used in millions, tens of millions of people, is they are doing what we're calling a mix and match study. So they have Pfizer vaccine and the AstraZeneca vaccine that has been used widely across the UK, Scotland and other areas. And what they are doing is a study looking at taking the AstraZeneca first and then the Pfizer first and then the AZ, and what is the best dose interval. And we're going to have a lot more information about that and that study in the next couple of weeks, and that will help us give the best advice about what vaccine people should receive second, and it might be a messenger RNA vaccine, a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, and when is the best interval for that. So we are responding, as I said, to a safety signal, and when we get more information, we will update our guidance. In the meantime, the vaccine is very effective and far, far better than getting sick with COVID-19. What this has meant, however, is that our worker program that was to start next week as we received more of the AstraZeneca vaccine will be put on pause for now. So the many workers and first responders who we were starting to get into that program, we're going to need to regroup, and we will come back early next week as soon as we have more information to determine how we're going to move forward with that program. One of the other questions that that I've been getting a lot of in the last week is, how do we determine who is clinically extremely vulnerable? And I understand there's a wide range of serious illnesses, and some people are wondering how that was determined. Well, I can tell you the list and the actual clinical conditions that people received letters, and I know many of you are receiving them now, was based on data from around the world and reviewed by a panel of experts led by physicians at the Provincial Health Services Authority. And evidence and science. And we ask people, please be patient. You should receive a letter by the 15th, and you will be able to book in after that for your vaccine. And I know many people have already. But we need physicians and people who are concerned that they're not on this list. We need your support to stick with these categories as they have been developed. Everyone will get vaccines in the next few months, and each group is protected as all of us are vaccinated. I've had many questions about the status of the J&J, the Janssen vaccine, and when we might be available. And the answer, unfortunately, is we don't yet know. We are hearing that there will be a shipment that we may receive by the end of April, but we have no timeline yet confirmed. So that's good news, and we will stay tuned and let people know. And the advantage of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that it is a single-dose vaccine, so there's a lot of flexibility that can come with that vaccine. The other one that we know is on the horizon that may get approval in the next few weeks is the Novavax vaccine, also a very effective vaccine that we've not yet had here in Canada. And these will be very helpful. And what we are planning to do, again, because all three of these, the AstraZeneca, the Johnson & Johnson, the Novavax, are fridge-stable vaccines, being able to kickstart our first responder and worker program as soon as they become available. So if you have any other questions about our vaccine program, I encourage everybody to go to the BC CDC and Immunize BC website. There's much detailed information there for everybody about these vaccines, about who they work in, about the ingredients in the vaccines, and the things that you can expect. And the information there will be updated regularly. So as we come into this long weekend, all of us recognize our need to connect, and it has been a long, long year for many. But we need to ensure more than ever that we are socializing safely, because we do have an end in sight. All of this talk about vaccines and about how well they are going to work to protect us in our communities is in sight, but it's not here yet. If you do choose to spend time with anyone other than your immediate household in this weekend, it must be outdoors. And all of the COVID-19 safety plans and precautions need to continue to be followed. As more and more of our seniors and elders in particular are protected, we need to give that time for that best protection to take hold. That means ensuring you're giving enough space to others, staying away if you're feeling at all unwell, and staying with that same group, small group of people. I'd also like to speak to a little bit about expectations for travel. I know this is a time when people think about that. This is not the time for any of us to be traveling for leisure or vacation or getaways outside of our community. Travel is still very high risk for all of us. We've seen that. We see that we take the risk from where we are coming, and we take it home from where we have been. So if you are in doubt at all this weekend, just don't go. A good guideline is to think about staying within the area where you would go for a day trip. If it requires an overnight stay, a vacation rental, then it is not a good idea right now. If you need a break, go to a local campground. Stay in a local hotel. Staying local will support our local businesses. And we all know how important that is right now with the restrictions that we've had to put in place this week to try and get our numbers down. Get takeaway from your local restaurant. Support your local community. Today as well, our seniors and elders in care are safely able to be visited over the next few weeks. We know that families have been waiting for this for a long time, and it's going to be an emotional and a welcome homecoming. But we need to be cautious and be careful. We know that we'll get virus introduced into homes, and we don't want that now. We know that everybody who's been isolated from friends and family for these many, many months need to have that connection, and we need to do it safely. So that means wearing masks, that means going by yourself, having your visit with your loved one only, and making sure that if you are feeling unwell at all, that you wait for another time. As we look to our long weekend, we need to make this a safe long weekend so that we can get through this phase of our pandemic as more and more vaccine is available in the weeks to come. We all have the same ability to spread COVID-19, and we all have the same ability to stop the spread, and we know what to do. Staying small, staying outside, staying local will help us bend our curve again as our immunization program moves up. I hope you all have a safe and enjoyable weekend, and please remember to be kind to each other, to be calm, and to stay safe.